Tov, moving right along with today's beautiful Daf Yomi, Gittin, Daf Gimel, Gittin 3. So just to recap, how do we get to the Daf Gimel of Gittin? So the Talmud begins that somebody, let's say a husband, appoints an agent, a shaliach, to bring a get from outside of Israel, what's called Medina Sayam, and give this get to his wife. When the agent brings the get to his wife and he gives it to her in front of two people or three people, as we see in the Gemara, he needs to say the words "B'fanai nechtav, b'fanai nechtam," that the get was written before me and signed before me. And the Gemara on the top of Beis, Amud Beis, asks the question, why? So the Gemara gives two answers to this question. The answer of Rabbah and the answer of Rava. The answer of Rabbah is that outside the land of Israel, we're a bunch of people who were not careful about the laws of Gittin or didn't know. And so therefore, they were not Bekian, they were not experts. And so therefore, they didn't know that they need to give it lishma. They didn't know that the get needed to be written precisely for this woman and not just for women in general. It had to be written specifically for this man's wife. And so therefore, as Rashi explains, when the agent would say it was written before me and signed before me, and the people would say, was it done lishma? And he would say yes, and that's why. As another answer to this question, that's the answer of Rava. Rava explains that there's a concept called kiyum shtaros, the certification of a document. And the basic point is that there needs to be the establishment that this document is a proper document. Even though there are witnesses on it, we need another form of verification to say that this is an official document, that this is okay. So it's the verification of the official document. And that was called kiyum shtaros. So there were not a lot of people going back and forth from, think about this, that if you're in one part of the world and you want to verify your document in another part, you need to have a stamp of verification, basically, in addition to the witnesses on that document. So Rava says this agent would say it was written before me and signed before me, and that would be the equivalent of the stamp of verification. So Gemara says, well, according to Rabbah, why is it sufficient to say that it was written? Rabbah says the answer was because not everybody does it with Shema. Not everybody knows outside of Israel, knows that the get was done properly. So the Gemara asks, well, if that's the case, why is this one witness sufficient? Why is this agent sufficient? We need two witnesses to make sure it was done properly. Two witnesses are required for things. So the Gemara explains that really everybody who writes a get is an expert and it's done properly. But in this case, it's just rabbinically that we require this agent to testify, or the witness to testify that they did it, that the document was done properly. And in this case, because if we wouldn't believe the agent, the woman would be very hard to divorce. And so in a situation where the woman was in one place and the husband was overseas, so mishum iguna ikua be'rabbanan, the rabbis were lenient here in order to allow this leniency to take place, to allow her to get divorced. We're on top of Gimel Amid Aleph, so the Gemara says, but why is that a leniency? Hi kuahu, why is that a leniency? Chumrahu, this is going to end up hurting the woman. It's a stringency. If we would require two witnesses when they bring the get to say it was written before me and signed before me, then then the husband, then it would be foolproof. And it would be very strong security. The husband would not be able to come and challenge the get. But since there's only one, he wouldn't be able to come and challenge it and say it wasn't done properly. But now, since there's only one, then the husband can come and challenge it. And so therefore, by saying that you only require one witness, you're actually hurting the woman. So the Gemara says, no, Kivan Damar, since we're going to learn on Daf Hayam Abayz that there is going to be a statement b'fnei kama knows Noah, how in front of how many people does the agent need to give the get? And to say this phrase, b'fanei nachtam, b'fanei nachtam. So Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Chadam, or b'fnei Beis, Chadam, b'fnei Shlosha. That one says before two, and the other says before three. So he's going to have to basically give her the get in front of other people. And so since that's the case, meikara meidak dayek lo asel ruye nafshi. At the outset, the agent, when he receives the get from the husband, he will investigate it, and he'll know that the husband really intends to divorce her, and he's not going to make any more challenges. The agent doesn't need a hassle, and so therefore he's going to make sure that the husband really wants to divorce her. He's not going to raise any issues. And then if the husband does come and raise an issue, we're not going to believe him, because we're going to say for sure the agent investigated this and he has no interest in starting problems. And so therefore, that's why we believe this one agent. So now the Gemara says, okay, that's the explanation according to Rabbah. But according to Rabbah, how does Rabbah say? How does Rabbah explain all this? Because Rabbah says that the whole reason is because we want the one agent to be Mekayim the Shtar, to uphold the document and say it's really an official document. And therefore, he's saying, it's serving as what's called Kiyum Shtaros. Well, Rabba the Amar, according to Rabba, who says, there are no witnesses to certify the document by a tray. So how do you certify a document? Usually you have either the two witnesses come forth themselves and say, we signed it, or they recognize their signatures in the court and the court approves it, or you have two other witnesses who say, we saw these witnesses sign this document. So according to Rabba, who says that there are no, and the reason why the agent needs to say this, because otherwise there's no other way to officially certify this document, because they live overseas. So if that's the case, like by a tray, one agent shouldn't be sufficient here. You should require two. So because in general, the way we officially certify another document is with two witnesses, not with one witness. So why in this case are we allowed to certify with just one agent? The Gemara says, well, here this is a case of isurin, of isur v'heter, whether or not the woman's allowed to remarry. And eid echad neman b'isurin. Well, in that case, one woman, whether or not she can remarry, that's a case of isur v'heter. She's just prohibited, and so therefore one witness is sufficient there. Like Rashi said on the previous page, about one witness is believed to say he took the tithe because he anyways could do it. Tosa says we learn out from V'saf Rolah that by Anida she counts for herself. So one witness is believed by Isurin. Gemara says the same question we asked earlier. When do we say that one witness is believed by a case of Isurin? Can go in Chaticha Safik Shal Chelov Safik Shal Shuman. In a case where we're not sure if the meat is kosher, we're not sure if it's kosher or non-kosher. But the prohibition has not been established. But in our case over here, is chazik isura de ishes ish. We know that this woman is married, so the prohibition that she's a married woman has been established. So therefore, one witness shouldn't be believed here. It's a matter of a sexual prohibition. And we require two witnesses. So how can this agent certify the document on his own? It's a matter of erva, and there shouldn't be two. One witness shouldn't be sufficient. So it explains the Gemara, Bedinhu, excuse me, hold on. The Gemara explains, Bedinhu, that really the Kiyum Shtaris Nami Lolibai. So the Gemara says, actually, when you go back to the law of Kiyum Shtaris in general, of certifying a document, you really shouldn't require two witnesses. K'derei Shlakish, the Amar Reish Lakish, Eidim Achasumim Al Ashtar, Nasu Kamisha Nachru Eidosim Bebezim. Once they sign the document, it's as though they were cross-examined. Really, you don't require certification of a document. Rabbanan hu de itzrach. The rabbis just require it to be an extra stringency. It's like a notary. What's the point of it? You just require like another set of eyes. But biblically speaking, it's not required. It's just rabbinically required. And now here in this case, because if we're going to require the two witnesses to certify it, it's going to make it too difficult, and so then she'll become an aguna, and so therefore the rabbis will be lenient. So the rabbis are lenient. So the Gemara says, "Hi kulahu, why is this a leniency? Chumrahu, this is a stringency on the woman. The if we would require it to be done right from the beginning, if we require two witnesses." The husband can't come and challenge it and knock out the get. But since we don't require one from the outset, the husband can come and be one witness. The husband will challenge the get, say it wasn't done, and then he'll knock out this agent. So Gemara says, no, we were not going to believe the husband if he does it. Even the Amar Mar, because since we have a teaching. Before how many does he need to give the get? Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chanina, Chanam, Rav Nishnaya, Chanam, Rav Nishalosh, either in front of two or three. So therefore, Meikara made that dayak below asa the agent from the outset will check. He's only going to do this if he knows the husband is not going to cause problems. And so therefore, if the agent does this and the husband causes problems, we're not going to believe the husband. We're not going to believe the husband. So the Gemara says, the Rava, my time will Amar Karava. So again, we saw the two explanations for why you require b'fanei nechtam. One is because Rava says they're not experts on Lishma, and Rava says because we want to do Kiyum Shtaros. So what's the reason why Rava doesn't say Rava's answer that they're not experts on Lishma? Well, he gives a good answer. He says, Amracha Mika Tani b'fanei nechtam Lishma, b'fanei nechtam Lishma. It doesn't say in the Mishnah that you have to say it was written in front of me Lishma or was signed in front of me Lishma. So it just says b'fanei nechtam. You're adding in the word Lishma. It's not required, that aspect of it. So that's why he says it's about Kiyum Shtaros. The Rabba says, but Dinu the listening half. Rabba says, really, actually, the Mishnah should have said Lishma. Eladim mifshas le dibure asila migzaye. But if you say extra words, if you require extra words, you might come to mess things up. The less words you say, the better. The less chance you have of messing things up. And so therefore, so therefore we just say two words. B'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara says, well, still in this case too, hashanami asila migzaye. Chada mitlas. So hashanami asila migzaye. Well, the Gemara says, well, if so, you require him to say b'fanei nechtam. We might mess that up and say b'fanei nechtam instead of saying the exact formulation b'fanei nechtam. Gemara says no. Chada mitlas, guys. If you have one of three words b'fanei nechtam l'shma, that you might mess up. But chada mitarti lo, guys. And since it's just a two-word phrase b'fanei nechtam and then another two-word phrase b'fanei nechtam, he's not going to mess that up. So therefore, that's the phrase. And that's why. So that's how Rabba explains it. So the Gemara says, the Rabba my time Rabba. Why doesn't Rabba say it's about Kiyum Shtaros like Rabba says? Rabba would say Imkein Nisne b'fanei nechtam. It would only have to say it was signed in front of me. So v'sulo. And it wouldn't have to add anything else. But b'fanei nechtam. Why does it also have to say it was written in front of me? Because if we just care about Kiyum Shtaros, we don't care about being written. We just care about being signed. So the Gemara answers, Shema mina ba'ino l'shma. So therefore, Rabba says it must be that it's about l'shma, not about Kiyum Shtaros. The Rabba will respond to that. Bedinu delisni hachi. Really, it should have said just b'fanei nechtam. So if that's the case, Ella de im kain. But if that's the case, that if it just says b'fanei nechtam, we might come to confuse it. In general, Kiyum Shtaros requires two witnesses. In this case, we have an exception for an iguna. But if we just said b'fanei nechtam, we just say, oh, it's like every other case of Kiyum Shtaros, and in front of one witness will be sufficient by all other cases. And so therefore, we're going to say, no, we're not, to show that there's a distinction between this and other cases of Kiyum Shtaros. In this case, we don't just require b'fanei nechtam, we also require b'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara says, the Rabba would say, me dummy. He said, Rabba would say, you'll never confuse this with another case of Kiyum Shtar. It's totally different. Hasam Yadina. And there you say, not that was written in front of me, but you say Yadina. We know this. We know this contract. Hacha b'farma. Here we say it was before me. Hasam there by Kiyum Shtaros in general. Baal Davar wa Mehaman. Excuse me, I skipped the line. Hasam Isha wa Mehemna. In general, by Kiyum Shtaros, we don't believe a woman. Hacha Isha Mehemna. Here, a woman herself is believed. If a woman brings a get for her friend, we're going to, and says it was written in front of me, we're going to believe her, as it says on Daf Chaf Gimel. Even the women who are not believed to say that their husbands have died are believed to say that the get was written in front of me. And the third case is Hasam Baldavar wa Mehemen. There, in that case, a man is not who is the Baldavar, who's the litigant in the case. The actor is not believed to be Mekayim the Shtar. But Hacha Baldavar Mehemen. In this case, a woman herself who brings the get, she brings her own get to the court or wherever she brings it to, in front of 2 or 3 people. She says she brings it. The husband says, you're only going to be divorced once you bring this get to the Bezdin. She'll be believed. So therefore, she's the one who could be making the shtar. But in general, we don't believe the litigant. So therefore, for this reason, Rabbah says we don't have to add in the phrase "fanei nechtov." It's totally different from a case of kiyum shtaros in general. But Rabbah will respond, "Atu hacha ki amar yadina milo mehemni." Rabbah says no. If they would say here, we know this contract, not that it was written before me, but we saw the certification, we will believe them. And so since even the Kiyamar Yadina Mahamne, and since if we would use that formulation, he'd be believed, then we might come to confuse it with the case of Kiyum Shtaros of certification in general with one witness. And so therefore we might come to do certification of the document with one witness in general, and that would be a big problem. So the Gemara says, and according to Rabba, who says that the whole reason why you have to say b'fanei nechtov is because they're not experts in Lashma, and so therefore this is to confirm it. Who's the expert? Who's the Tana? Who's the author of our Mishnah who requires not just Kasiva Lashma or not just Chasima Lashma, but both of them? Who requires that it be written and signed Lashma? Because you have to say b'fanei nechtov in order to confirm that both of them were done Lashma. So who's the author of that Mishnah? Gemara says it can't be Rebbe Meir and it can't be Rebbe Elazar. We're on top of Gimel Mabeis. Rebbe Meir Chasim Abai Ksivu Abai. If you want to say it's Rebbe Meir only requires the signing of a document with Shema, but not the writing of the document. It's not, because we learn in the Mishnah on Daf Chaf Aleph. We're going to get to this Mishnah. It says Ein Kosvin b'mechuber l'karka. That you're not allowed to write a document when it is the get when it's still attached to the ground, because it says because of vinasan that it can only be missing is vinasan, not the talisha, not the detaching it from the ground. But the Mishnah says that actually, if you wrote it while it was attached to the ground and then you removed it and then you signed it, it's kosher. So we see from here that the ksiva is not essential, that the ksiva doesn't have to be done lashma. Look at the Rashi. Rashi says, according to this approach, chasima lashma, we require the signature lashma, because when it says the cost of law, that was only referring to the signature, and so since he signed it when it was removed from the ground, the mayor allows it. So we see from here that when it says because of, it's on the chasima, and so therefore, we're going to say that obviously our Mishnah, which requires the Ksiva Lishma, is not like Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Elazar, and if you want to say our Mishnah is like Rabbi Elazar is the opposite. Ksiva by Chasima by, he requires only that it be written Lishma, but not that it be signed Lishma. And how do we know this? And if you want to say, well, Rabbi Elazar, that really is Rabbi Elazar, and we say it doesn't require Chasima, it doesn't require the signature be done with Shema. That's mid'oraisa. So maybe that's only biblically speaking, but mid'rabbanan, but rabbinically speaking, But you want to say that Rebbe Lazar does require the signature of Shema? It can't be. The Mishnah later on is going to tell us that there are 3 cases of Gittin, of types of divorce documents, which are rabbinically disqualified. V'lo bai Rebbe Lazar chasim l'shma, and Rebbe Lazar doesn't require. And Rebbe Lazar in those cases doesn't even require chasim l'shma. Excuse me for 1 second. So basically, as we were saying, that Rebbe Lazar does not. We're saying that Rebbe Lazar does not require the chasima l'shma. If you want to say, well, maybe it doesn't only require it biblically, but rabbinically requires it. And the proof for this, they can't say that even rabbinically requires it, because there are 3 cases which we said are rabbinically the get is prohibited or disqualified, and Rebbe Lazar doesn't raise in that context the case of chasima l'shma. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Yeah, we're going to get to this Mishnah later on in Yud Zayin Amar Beis. Gimel Gittin Psulin. There are 3 types of Gittin which are disqualified. Vim says, and if you get married under these circumstances, even though the get is disqualified, Avlad is kosher. The offspring is not going to be a mamzer, because we're going to say that it's only rabbinically disqualified, but biblically it's kosher. What are these 3 cases? Kasav b'ksav yado ve'ino of Adam. Let's say there are no witnesses. The husband wrote it himself and he gave her the get without any witnesses. Or yesh Adam, or let's say there are witnesses, ve'in bozman, or there's no date. Or yesh bozman, ve'in bo ela edach. There's a date, but there's only 1 witness. Harei elu shlosha gittin psulin. These are the 3 cases where the get is disqualified rabbinically. V'imnisei savlad kosher. And if they get married, the offspring, however, since it was biblically a valid get, the offspring is kosher. Rebbe Lezer says, Af al pi she'eno av edim. Rebbe Lezer adds another case, even though there are no witnesses, he says, Whereas Rebbe Lezer adds the case, Rebbe Lazar says, I argue with the first case. And he says, even though there are no witnesses who signed this document, but it was given in front of witnesses, meaning to say that the document was not written in front of the husband, and the husband, there are no witnesses, and it was given in front of the witnesses, kosher, it's going to be kosher lechatchila. So meaning to say, even though it wasn't written in front of the husband and there are no witnesses on the document, but it was given in front of the witnesses, it's going to be kosher. And it's a valid document, and therefore she can use it to collect her ksuva even from nechasim mishubadim. Because the only reason why witnesses have to sign this document is because of this concept of what's called tikkun ha'olam, that we want the husband, we want the person who has the contract to be able to certify the document even if the witnesses all die. And so therefore they'll say, we saw the handing over of this contract. And by the fact that they signed the contract, then we can certify this contract through other witnesses. And so that's going to be called tikkun ha'olam. But it's not technically speaking required. And so therefore we can't say that our Mishnah is like Rebbe Lezer, because the town of our Mishnah requires that you say b'fanai nechtam for the purpose of Lishma. And according to Rebbe Lezer, there's no reason whatsoever to have the signature of the documents. You're not even required the signatures. And so therefore, for sure, we're not going to require Lishma. So therefore, we have to say, who is our Mishnah like? Our Mishnah must be like Rabbi Meir, but then we say Rabbi Meir doesn't require ksiva. Rabbi Meir, ksiva l'shma. When we say Rabbi Meir does not require ksiva l'shma, that must be only midiaraisa. That's only biblical speaking. But rabbinically speaking, he would require it. So that's what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara says it can't be. Let's say According to Rabbi Meir, you want to say that Rabbi Meir requires that the ksiva be done lishma rabbinically. Rabbi Meir says even if the husband finds the get in the trash, and so therefore it certainly wasn't written for the purpose of this woman. He just finds the get thrown out. V'chasmu v'nasnu, and he signs the document and gives it to her kosher. We're going to say it's kosher. So we see that very explicitly in the name of Rabbi Meir that he does not require ksiva l'shma. He only requires chasimo shma. And so therefore it's clearly not like our Mishnah. And if you want to say anam midyoraisa kamas minanlah, and if you want to say that which we learned in the name of Rav Nachman, that the get is kosher if you find them in the trash, that's only biblically speaking. We can't say that. Which would have said Rabbi Meir would say, biblically speaking, it's kosher if you find it in the trash. So the Gemara is going to try and say, actually, it's Rebbe Lazar, but we'll stop here, the recording. We'll stop the recording for today's daf and stop on top of Daled Amud Aleph. Pick this up again today.